Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. I'm the WrapMaker. Now, today's show is kind of a neat one because it's a continuation of my last show. Now, if you remember, if you watched that pendant project that we just did, we made a project that had a nice little loop at the bottom. Here's a little picture of what we did. Now, notice the little loop we have there. And now on that project, I just did something simple. I just put one single piece of wire hanging from it. I added a little texture. Well, this week, as I promised you then, I'm going to show you a few different ways of adding something to that. And there's so many things that you can do with this. And the whole point of this is to really kind of get your mind thinking about how you can use this in a creative way. And I really want you to think about that. Don't just settle for what I'm going to show you today. I want you to make a few of these that we made today, and then I want you to start expanding from it. All right? I want you to start coming up with your own thing, with your own style. All right? So let's jump right into it. Now, this first method that we're going to do, we're going to play off of the original. We're going to kind of look for something that we're going to dangle from the bottom of it. And this one, though, we're not just going to add just a hammered texture into it. I'm going to show you a method of adding texture, adding something to it, using just some simple tools. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is we want to cut about a 3-inch piece of this 14 gauge round wire. And I'm just going to try my best to straighten it. Remember, 14 gauge is really kind of a firm wire, no matter how dead soft you get it. It's because of its size, it's going to be pretty firm. So just try to get it as straight as you can. Now, we want to go ahead and flatten this. Remember, we paddled out the bottom. And remember, we don't want to over hammer this. We don't want to hammer it so much that it makes it brittle. So we're going to just start here at the bottom. We want to paddle this out. So make sure you just kind of aim your blows right here towards the bottom. And once you get it paddled out how you want, that's getting there. Okay, so I think we're paddled out pretty well here. So I'm going to straighten it up just a little. The next thing we want to do is we want to kind of decide how long we want the dangle, because we're going to continue up the wire. So going to want the dangle probably about this long. So let me put this back on here, and I'm just going to hammer some more, but I'm not going to hammer it quite as firmly. But I don't want to make this section flat. I just want to take some of the roundness out of it to give us tapered look. And now it's going to bow because of what we've done. So flip it over and then play with it a little bit. Take that bend out. Get it back to straight. Now, something we want to do, grab my hand file, is I want to round this bottom up. So I'm just going to kind of give it a couple of passes with this. Just shape this a little bit. This is exactly what we did the last time. We just kind of shaped the bottom part, that part that we've paddled. Okay. So there's our shape that we want. We're going to keep this out here because we're going to use this as a resist. Now, I really enjoy patterns on metal. I think of some of the turquoise jewelry that's got this nice intricate patterns around the outside. And I like to mimic that in a lot of the stuff that I do. So what I do is I take a Sharpie
And I want to just make some lines on here. I'm going to make just a line patterns here. So I'm going to make them kind of close together there, and then down just a little. I go down about the same length to there. And then this last part, I have to toss my glasses on for this because I want to get kind of precise here. I'm going to measure this bottom part, the very bottom. It's about 3 millimeters. So what I want to do is I'm going to put a dot on here, right? As close to the center as I can. Just this nice little dot. And this is a target for us. And we're going to use a couple of things for this. The first thing is this center punch. This is an old one that I kind of inherited from my father-in-law. But it's just got this little point to it. That's going to make the little dot in the bottom. And then to make these lines, I'm going to use a chisel. Now, you don't want a very sharp chisel. This has got a pretty good point to it. And what you can do is you can kind of take some of that point off or find an older one. But I just kind of take and blunt it just ever so slightly because you really don't want a sharp one. That would cut this piece of wire in half almost. So you want to avoid doing that. So I want something kind of wide. Very good. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my punch and I'm going to line it up with one of my lines, and I'm going to just tap it a couple of times to put a line here. So if you feel this, you'll feel a line. So use your fingernail. And I'm just going to kind of bring out each one of these lines here. There's another one. I'll go down to this one. I'm not really, just kind of putting a little light tap on these. And then the final one down here. Now, sometimes I may have to go back, kind of redo these, because what happens is that all I have here is a point. And what I want to do is I want to move the punch, this chisel, just kind of to the right and to the left to open that up a little bit. Let's do the same thing here. We will just adding just a little width to this. And the last one. All it does, use that chisel to kind of add some width to each of those. Now, the last thing we want to do is we want to, this thing keeps bowing on me, and it's going to do that. That's just because you're working the metal a little bit. The last thing is we want to use our center punch down here on this bottom. I'm just going to give it a couple of taps. And you can always go back and make it a little more defined if you want. And do the same thing, kind of move it around a bit. You notice I'm not really hitting very hard. I'm really just kind of tapping on this to make each of these areas. So there, I've got a nice little hole there. And I'm going to want to, I really need to clean the bottom up a little bit better. It's really not round like I like it. So let's get it rounded up. There we go. And we're going to want to clean these marks off. And since it's a fine tip permanent marker, you can use fingernail polish remover to do that. So I'm going to do that right now off camera. So the last thing I want to do is I want to make these stick out. I personally like to use a product from Rio Grande called Midas Black Max. This stuff works really well. And it's very easy to use. I just take a cotton swab and I dip it in here, and then I put it on each of those marks that I just made, and this will turn it black after about 30 seconds, depending on how you want to do it. There's a couple of ways that you can remove off the excess. You can polish it off, put it on a buffing wheel, and that'll polish it off. I like to take some really, really fine sandpaper and just kind of hit it with the sandpaper to kind of remove the black that I don't want, and it leaves the black I do want on there. It should. It should. We'll find out. Sometimes I have completely taken the black that I wanted to stay on there all. But yeah, there it's looking good. So we're just gonna do that. And if you have to reapply it, go ahead and reapply it. I'm gonna grab a polisher. I disappeared. Let me just grab some. This is a polishing cloth, the sunshine cloth, and I'm just gonna do this. Yeah. See, so now it brings all of those marks up. You can see them to just have just a little bit of black in there. And that adds just some texture. And then the final thing we would do is we would take some round nose, about the length you want to do this. So I want it to be about this long. We're just going to bring this around. Pliers. If I can get it to continue, there we go. We're going to trim it. Trim this off. And now we can go ahead and put it on the piece. With our WrapMakers, we'll close this up so that it stays on. You take your time. Take your time when you do this so you don't get frustrated. But so then we've just got something very simple. You can add more on there. Something else you can do is they sell a lot of really good stamps. Like I said, Impress Art, they've got hundreds of them that you can put on things like this. So check them out. You should look at some of the stuff that they have available. They've got kits and all kinds of stuff. You can get initials, everything to put on there. So that's just one way that you can add just something different to the bottom of the piece. Let's take a look at a second one. So the second method that we want to do is we want to be able to take another piece of our 14 gauge round wire and hang something from it. And in this case, I'm going to be using this giant bead. This is a beautiful bead. It's a nice green bead. It'll look really well with the pendant. But we want to make sure that it can go on here and not slide through. So see if it slides through. So we want to fix that. To fix that, let's straighten our wire first. Now this, again, we're using large gauge wire, and this can be frustrating to straighten this wire out. But trust me, if you take your time, and don't let it get the best of you, you can get this as straight as you possibly can. I think that's about right. Okay, so that's good. So this is about a 3-inch piece of wire, and I'm going to use my bench block and my chasing hammer. And what I want to do is I want to kind of hammer this bottom tip to prevent the bead from coming off of my wire. I'm going to use that chasing hammer for that. But when I'm doing this, I want you to think about how high up you want the bead on the wire. The higher you want the bead on that wire, you're going to hammer more of the wire. And I'm probably going to hammer a pretty good length of this, but I'm going to taper it. It's not going to be so wide that the bead won't go on, hopefully, because I've messed this up before. So trust me, sometimes it's trial and error. So let's go ahead and we're going to hammer the bottom of this. Gonna aim all those blows right there at the very bottom. Flare this out. Okay. So I think it's about as wide as I want to do it. Let's take our bead and check and see if it comes off. Shouldn't. Okay, so it comes off just a little bit still. So we need to kind of add a little bit more to that. So that bead side. And we're going to add just some more through this. Okay, I think that might work. So there. So notice the bead won't come off of there. And I want to probably do a little hammering up here as well, because the wire is not so thick that it's going to going to stop it if I hammer this. But I'm just going to hammer this just to add a little width, a tapered length to it, just so that it looks better. And since I'm using a large bead, I kind of keep looking at it to see. So I'm going to want to keep probably a pretty good length of this. So definitely don't hammer this with the bead on, because you will run the risk of hitting the bead and shattering it. And then you got to start over again with another bead. Okay. So there we go. So let's straighten it out. And remember, when you're hammering, one of the things to remember on this is that as you're hammering, you're making the wire harder. You're hardening the wire. And if you plan on bending it or manipulating the wire in some way, you don't want to hammer it too much to where it won't move. So the area that you're going to bend and roll into the bail for this, you want to make sure you don't hammer very much on that section, because it will make it so hard that you won't be able to roll the bail. So the other thing I want to do is I want to take my file again, and I want to file this kind of round just to kind of take the edge off just a little bit here. I'm not doing a whole lot of filing to this. Just I don't want to take too much of the bulk out of it. Okay, there we go. So put your bead on. There, it looks good. And now we want to make the bail on here. So again, round nose pliers. Where you want the bail to be. Make sure everything is flattened. And then just bring it around again. Get around. Just like this. And we're going to trim off our excess. Always trim too long so that you can, if you need to trim more, you can trim more. Just want to go. Whoops. Yeah, I can close it up most of the way. We're going to put it on here, and we want to close it up the rest of the way so that it does not come off. So there, look. See, so this is just another method of adding something to this. And you could even, in this area right here, you can even add texture to this if you'd like to add even more to this. So just another way of adding some decoration to the bottom of this. Let's take a look at a third way. Now I've got a new pendant here. This is a different one. I haven't showed you this, but this is one that I've recently done. And I've got kind of a good size loop on here. And this one, what I want to do is I want to use these beads, and I want to make a loop that's going to hang from the loop, if that makes sense. A loop from the loop. Okay. But I've got 3 different size beads here. So I'm going to take one of the small ones. I'm going to feed it onto it. I've got a 4-inch piece of 18 gauge round wire that I've done. And, let me straighten it out right quick. Oops, wrong thing. There we go. Let's straighten this out just a little bit, just so that things go on there nice and easily. This one's got a couple of little bumps in it, so we want to kind of take some of those bumps out. There. Now I'm going to take one of the smaller beads. Now, there's no reason why I don't work with beads very often is because my giant fat fingers just hate grabbing onto these beads. And so you'll see me struggle with trying to pick beads up. So ignore that. Forgive me for that. There we go. Let's feed this is the smaller bead. Now I've got a larger bead. I'm going to feed that one on there. And then we're going to finish that up with another one of these smaller beads. So this is what we've got. Got 3 beads here, right here in the middle. And I'm just going to kind of make this U shape here. We got to be careful because what happens is if we put too much of a bend here, it's not going to want to stay there in the center. It's going to want to have a mind of its own and get stuck. But all I've done is I've made this simple U shape here. Make sure that both sides are kind of even. And then have a look at the piece and decide how far down you want this to dangle. Now I'm going to bring these in, cross them over one another, just like that. And I'm going to take a look at it. I think I'm going to grab my round nose. I think I'm going to do it right about here. All I'm going to do is I'm going to take and I'm going to bend this here, trim it off. I want to do the same thing on the other side. There. Do the same thing over here. Try and get these about as even as we can. You may need to adjust it, but bring this around. Just like that. And I'm going to trim it. Kind of in the same place. May have to retrim that. May have to retrim, that's fine. And we may have to just even this out. Because you notice that the beads are still able to move. But then I want to feed each one of these onto that bottom loop. So just kind of work them on there. Whoops, it worked. I got one on. I may have to bring these a little closer together. Spread them back out. Make an adjustment here in a second. There. Just kind of take your time and work with this. So all we really want to do is we just want these to evenly hang at the bottom, just like that. So I'm going to trim these loops in the back and then close those loops off. Again, it's always good to not trim too much at first. Close this loop up. All right, and then let's do the same thing over here. Going to trim just a little bit more. And again, with our WrapMakers, we'll close this loop right. Very good. See, so here we go. So here's just one more way. And you can add a lot more. You can add more beads to this. You can make it longer. You can do a lot of things with this, but I just wanted to kind of give you an idea. Look at that. That looks pretty good. I really like that. That gives you another option for this, all right? Let's go and we'll look at the last and final way that I'm going to show you how to do this today. So let's take a look at that one. Okay, this final method is actually one that you may have already seen, because if you take a look over my left shoulder, somewhere right in here, you'll see the fourth one. Let me show you. It's right here It's been here all along. I can get it off. Here we go. There we go. There we go. Look at this. This is a double pendant. And I'm going to show you right now how to make a double pendant like this. But have a closer look at this. This is my wife's personal piece, so it's been hanging on the wall. Don't tell her it's been sitting here, but it's a little tarnished. I do need to clean it up a little bit. But here's your loop at the bottom, and here's your pendant. So let's take a look at how you do that. So what I've done is I've already made a pendant, and I've got it to the point to where I want to make my bail. Now, down in the description, I have not only how to make the loop pendant, but how to make this basic pendant as well. I've done videos on both of them. Very easy. Making pendants is probably the very base of wire wrapping. If you're a wire wrapper and you're selling your work, you've probably made hundreds of pendants, and people are very drawn to them. And that's why we spend a lot of time showing you how to make them. But this one is the basic pendant, so go ahead and look that up. The link is down in the description below. Okay, so I've got it to where I've started the bail. So I've done my first bail wrap right here. What I want to do is, and when I make my bails, I double wrap the bails. So I've got all of the wrap wire still here. And I'm going to take my bail wires, and I want to bend these between these wrap wires. I want to bend them so that they come down between here, and then I'm going to take this long wire, and I'm going to wrap the bail into itself so that it stays. So I am going to bend this, and you can use a pen or you can use bail making pliers, but we don't need a whole lot to this. We don't need a huge bail on this piece, so I'm going to make kind of a small one. And where this long wire and my curved bail wire intersect, I'm going to bend them. I'm going to use my WrapMakers and bend it, and I want to keep everything up here curved, and everything below that intersect point is going to be flat against this wrap right here. So let me do that. So I want to make my bail. I'm going to flatten it. Just flatten it just like that. Now, before I do anything, I want to thread the bottom of the bail wires onto my loop. Now make sure that when you do this, that you have the front of both of them on the same side, because you can get confused very easily. And then all I'm going to do is I'm going to continue my wrap. Now, you've got an extra dangling thing here that's kind of in the way, so you got to kind of work around that. So take your time on this, but I'm just going to wrap from the top of the bail down to where I started. And there's about 7 wraps, so wrap here. Keep going until I come down to this second, to my starting wrap wire there. So I'm here right where my bail wires meet. I'm going to set these. So I'm going to use my bail or my WrapMakers here. I'm going to set that wire so it doesn't move out of place. And then we're to secure the bail. And this is this design is probably one of the most secure bails you'll ever make. And on this particular piece's double pendant, I definitely want a nice strong bail. And we're going to trim this little twisty here short. There. That's nice and short. I'm going to take my 2 long wires that are sticking down the back. With my WrapMakers, I'm going to kind of pull them away a little bit. Now one, let's get the other one. There. And I want to point them up toward the top. That covers up our little pigtail there, and that makes this so it's nice and safe. Won't cut anybody. We're trim these tails kind of short. There. Probably just trim just a little bit. Yeah, just a little bit. Again, always trim your wires too long. And then I'm just going to use my WrapMakers and push them up and over that pigtail. And then I've got all these extra wires here. I'm actually going to take them off because I've got enough of the design at the top. I want the bottom just to look nice and plain. So I'm going to grab all 3 of these and I'm going to wiggle them back and forth like this, and they'll pop off here. 1, there we go. And do the same thing over here. And I grab it and I'm going to wiggle them back and forth. And they're all off. See, so here is our finished piece. And there's something I want you to think about. Now, so I've got 2 stones on here. Imagine you put a loop on the bottom pendant, and then you do something like hang those beads. I just did that loop with the beads. If you did something like that, it'd make a nice long pendant. That would really be a beautiful, beautiful piece, wouldn't it? So think about maybe doing something like that. But have a look at the finished piece here. Those are just 4 ways that you can add something to this. Now, like I said in the opener, make some of these, get kind of accustomed to making them. And then what I want you to do is I want you to start expanding on that. I want you to start finding ways that you can make this your own. And I'm sure that you've got tons and tons of ideas. So start working on some of those. And something I want to remind everybody, I'm going to put my email address down here below in just a minute. But if you've made a piece and you want to show it off, or if you want to help with your social network and get people to your different socials, send me a picture of your work. Let me know what you've done. Now, today I want to feature one of those people that took advantage of that, Holly Dowdy. She sent me some pictures. I'm going to post them right here. Have a look at these. Aren't these awesome? She made the lasso bracelet, and I really think she did a great job with the beads on this one. The beads are beautiful, and she did such a fine job on that. Thank you, Holly, for sending me that. And let me post that email address for everybody. This is my email address. Send me your pictures. Send me stuff that you'd like me to feature here at the end of the show. Also, if you have questions, I had somebody recently send me in a question on how to get scratches off of a piece, and we're going to address that in a very soon in a different project. I'm going to show you how to take those scratches out, so be looking for that. But if you're having a problem, having difficulties with maybe a certain part of a project, or you just kind of aren't getting the ideas that you want to make a piece, send me an email. I'd be happy to help you out, all right? So check out that email address. And you can also leave a comment below. I love your comments. Everybody sends me these great comments, and I love reading them. And I do my very, very best to respond to everybody's comments that they post on my different shows. Well, everybody, I appreciate you stopping by. I am the WrapMaker, and if you want to make beautiful jewelry, you have to practice, practice, practice.